Hello, my name is Fenna. Welcome to the Self-Compassion channel. I am a certified coach and counselor, and I work with people in a limerent episode, and I work also with their partners. If you want my help on one-on-one coaching, please send me an email. My email address is in the description below. Now, limerence. My big loving limerence. We sometimes talk about trauma as in trauma being the fuel for limerence. But can a limerent episode be a traumatic event by itself? Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to explain to you why. I think you see 6 ring lights in my glasses because I'm super vain. Okay, limerence. As we know, hopefully by now we know that limerence is an intense and kind of obsessive form of romantic attraction, which is by nature highly disruptive and intense. I mean, that's the whole point of limerence. Limerence is, of course, also associated with excitement and passion. That is, in the beginning, it feels really good, but it's also really traumatic. And in this video, I will explore the concept of limerence trauma to shed a light on its psychological consequences coming with limerence. And I will give you 6 reasons why limerence itself can be a traumatic event. So I call this a limerence trauma. And with limerence trauma, I mean the psychological distress and the long-lasting effects that can arise and come from the limerence episode. We actually might experience symptoms and emotional responses that can resemble post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms, PTSD. And also other trauma-related disorders such as depression and severe trust issues. I've heard clients say, if I really hate someone, I wish them limerence. I wish limerence upon them. I've heard clients say, this is a living nightmare. So first we have the emotional dysregulation. Limerence, of course, triggers an enormous roller coaster of highs and lows, and the constant uncertainty, the fear of rejection, the fear of abandonment, the overall fear, and the reward and punishment game, and the obsession can lead to emotional and hormonal dysregulation. And this causes us extreme, intense anxiety and depression, and a whole lot of mood swings. We go from a 0 to 100 multiple times per day sometimes, and back, of course. And this emotional turmoil can disrupt our daily functioning, but also how we overall feel. It has a huge impact on how we feel. And because limerence feels so good in the beginning, we use up a lot of dopamine, so we exhaust the dopamine source. And when the dopamine source is exhausted, we feel the opposite of good. We feel depressed. And then we need the other to fuel our dopamine. And we slowly train our brain into an addiction. And being in an addiction is always traumatizing because we feel imprisoned and we cannot get out. Number 2, why is limerence traumatic? Why can limerence be a traumatic event? We have the intrusive thoughts and the rumination, because limerence involves persistent, unwanted, uninvited, and super intrusive thoughts about the limerent object / the other. And research shows that these intrusive thoughts combined with the rumination and excessive, fruitless fantasizing and longing can be distressing and super disruptive to someone's mental state. And the fact that we have no control over these thoughts and we cannot redirect these thoughts can lead to more obsession and to repetitive behavior, which can further intensify the traumatic impact. I've heard people say that the intensive thoughts and the rumination and the not being able to stop the thinking is crazy making and very exhausting. Number 3, self-esteem and identity challenges. Limerence can profoundly affect a person's self-esteem and their whole identity for a while. The idealization of the other may lead to feelings of inadequacy and self-doubt. We can mold ourselves too much. We can have poor boundaries, and this all really doesn't help in our feeling of self-worth. And the constant comparison to the ideal image we have of the other can create a very distorted self-perception. Yeah, we think we're not good enough for them. Sometimes we also feel embarrassed about the behavior that we've shown. There's a lot of shame and embarrassment around limerence, and I've heard people say that the whole experience, they describe it as, I've completely lost myself. Yeah, and that can be pretty scary when you have the feeling that you are completely cut off from yourself. You completely lost yourself in this. Number 4, social isolation and not functioning like you used to. Limerence can lead to social isolation and impaired functioning in more areas of your life. The preoccupation with the other, the limerent object, often results in neglecting current relationships around you and sometimes even responsibilities and personal growth. I've heard people say, I cannot work, I cannot concentrate. And the withdrawal from social interactions can, of course, increase the feeling of loneliness and the feeling of disconnection, and it can also still our personal growth. I've heard people in a limerent episode tell me they had no headspace for their kids or for their spouse. They had less patience and frequently they were overall just completely checked out. And the guilt that comes with that can also be very disruptive. I've heard people describe limerence as having to pick up the pieces of what was left from themselves and dealing with a wasteland after the limerent episode. And of course, like any other addiction, our behavior changes in limerence. We might get secretive, we might handle immorally, and we might hurt a lot of people around us. Limerence makes a lot of victims. Number 5, neurobiological factors. Neurobiological research indicates that limerence activates the brain regions associated with reward, motivation, and addiction, of course. So this suggests that a neural pathway involved in a limerence trauma may overlap with those involved in other traumatic experiences. Now, there hasn't been a lot of research done on limerence, unfortunately. I still get so many clients who say, oh my God, I didn't even know there was a name for this. How do I deal with this? And I hope one day it will be a DSM-5 diagnosis, because then there will be at one point a standardized treatment, because there's no standardized treatment yet. But the impact it has is so big, and people try to talk to a therapist or they try to talk to friends or their family and no one knows what the hell they're talking about. So it can be overall also a very lonely experience. Number 6, difficulty to date. Many limerents have a hard time finding someone to date in the aftermath of a limerent episode. They have disappointing dates and overall lack of attraction, and that can keep a limerent closed off for a romantic bond for years sometimes. comparing, of course, the infatuation and the overwhelming feelings that they felt when they first met their limerent object can lead to disappointment and even reinforce the limerence. You see, my limerent object is the only person in the world that can make me feel so good. The limerent might also be overly careful, not really trusting others anymore or their own feelings after the devastating experience of limerence. I've heard people state, I never, ever, ever want to experience this again. I'd rather be alone the rest of my life. Yeah, talking about impact. So in conclusion, limerence, even though it feels really good in the beginning, can lead to massive psychological trauma. We have the emotional dysregulation, the constant stress, and the ongoing alarm systems in our nerve system, the intrusive thoughts, the comparison to the other, the challenges to our self-esteem and even our identity, the loss of self, the social isolation, the feelings of shame and guilt, and the impaired functioning. Yeah, that can have far-reached consequences. I hope you use a lot of self-compassion in a limerent episode, because this is really, really tough. If you want my help in a limerent episode, again, please send me an email and I'll be happy to help you. And for now, I want to thank you for watching this video, and I hope to see you in another video. Bye.